I'd like to welcome you to the August 19th Charlotte City Council meeting. I think we have everyone here. I'd like to begin by welcoming you this evening. Thank you for joining us. And we begin our meetings with an invocation as an expression of inspiration, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. And the invocation for us as a council is really meant to underscore our proceedings and set the tone for how we move forward. We celebrate the religious diversity of our entire community, including those who do not have a religious faith. And tonight, Councilmember Molina will begin with our invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. First off, I want to say happy Monday to everyone who's joining us here and those who are watching us from home. We are 1 week out from CMS starting school, so I know that there are some anxious parents who are excited and probably terrified about next Monday. But as we center ourselves in this work, I want to say as we come together on this day, August 19th, 2024, let us pause as a council, center our thoughts and the responsibilities before us. May we continue to approach each decision we make with humility, each decision with integrity, and each challenge with a spirit of collaboration. Let our work today and every day be guided by a deep commitment to the well-being of all residents and fostering community where every voice is heard and valued.
Thank you. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I will begin with an explanation of our zoning process, but before we do that, we're going to go around the dais and do introductions. And I'll start with the Deputy City Clerk.
Billy Tons, Deputy City Clerk.
Good evening, everyone. Tijuana Brown, pleasure to serve District 3.
Good evening. I'm Marjorie Molina. I represent East Charlotte, District 5.
Liz Babson, Assistant City Manager for the City of Charlotte.
Dante Anderson, Mayor Pro Tem, District 1.
Hello, Ed Driggs, District 7.
Tara Picard, District 6.
Good evening, Luana Mayfield, Council Member at Large.
Terry Hagler-Grace, Senior Assistant City Attorney.
Excellent. So let me explain our zoning process for you so you can follow along. The process begins with the application submitted to our planning staff for review. And there are two types of cases on the agenda this evening. We have decisions and we have hearings. Decisions on cases for which the public hearing was previously held, so there's no other public comment. And then we have the hearings. For the hearings, anyone who wishes to speak is asked to see the clerk, the deputy clerk, before the start of that particular hearing. And staff's presentation will jumpstart that process. And the petitioner and those who are in favor of the petition will get 3 minutes combined to present their case, unless there are opponents or opposition signed up to speak. Or if staff is in opposition, the petitioner will get 10 minutes and the opposition will get 10 minutes, and then the petitioner will get a 2-minute rebuttal. If no one is opposed or signed up to speak against that particular petition, then the public hearing will be closed and we'll move on to the next one. The petition goes to our zoning committee of Planning Commission for review of recommendations. And I'd like to pause right now and pass it over to Chair Blumenthal so that he can introduce himself as well as his committee.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Is it switch on here?
I believe it's on. Tap it.
All right. Thank you, Councilwoman, and to the rest of council as well. My name is Andrew Blumenthal, and I'm the incoming chairman of the Zoning Committee of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission. I'll start by introducing my fellow committee members. To your left, we have Clayton Seeley, Robin Stewart, Rick Winokur, Teresa McDonald, Aaron Shaw, and Shauna Neely. The zoning committee will next meet, given Labor Day, on Wednesday, September 4th, in lieu of our usual Tuesday slot. That'll be at 5:30 PM. At that meeting, the zoning committee will discuss and make recommendations on the petitions that have public hearings this evening. The public is welcome to attend that meeting. However, please note that it is not a continuation of any public hearings from this evening. Prior to that meeting, you are welcome to reach out to us, to provide input. You can find our contact information as well as information on each of these petitions on the city's website at charlotteplanning.org. Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you, and the committee for your service. At this time, I'd like to pass it over to staff so we can review the deferrals and withdrawals.
Good evening, thank you. Teresa Montalvo. We have 7 deferral items this evening. I'll just read through those quickly. Item number 3, petition 2023-124 by the Paces Foundation. Item number 12, 2022-224 by the petitioner is SRL Central Avenue Properties, LLC. Item number 13, 2024-011, and the petitioner is Eastwood Homes. Item number 17, 2023-070, and the petitioner is Ahmad Developers, LLC. Item number 18, 2024-035, and the petitioner is the City of Charlotte. Item number 19, 2024-057, petitioner is Savilax Homes, LLC. And the final deferral this evening is item number 2024-060, Dream Key Partners. And all of those items are requesting a deferral to the September 16th, 2024 hearing.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to defer those items as requested?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you. We will now move on to our consent agenda, and we have petition items number 4 through 11 that might be considered in one motion, except for those items pulled by a council member. Please note that these petitions meet the following criteria. First, there was no public opposition to these particular petitions at the hearing. Secondly, the zoning committee recommended approval, and there are no changes after the zoning committee's approval. And lastly, staff recommends approval of these particular petitions. Are there any consent items that council would like to pull for a separate vote or comment? If not, may I have a motion to approve the following petitions and to adopt the zoning committee's statement of consistency for each of these petitions as appeared on our agenda as the council's own? And I will go through and read each petition number. Petition number 2023-152 by Sam's Commercial Properties, LLC. Petition number 2023-164 by Eaton's Acquisition, LLC. Petition number 2024-013 by Above and Beyond Students, Inc. Petition number 2024-030 by Asana Partners. Petition number 2024-032 by Troy Knight. Petition number 2024-036 by Julio Barrega. Petition number 2024-038 by Cambridge Partners, Inc. And petition number 2024-041 by McAlway Road Ventures, Inc. Can I get a motion to approve and adopt the zonings committee's?
Move to approve and adopt.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? That is unanimous. Barriga, yes. Okay, let's move forward with the items with changes after the zoning committee's recommendation. And I will pass it over to staff so staff can review those items.
Sure. That is item number 14, petition number 2024-022 by QTR Development Partners and Sunset Road Partners, LLC. There were 2 Minor changes made after the zoning committee's recommendation. This include adding a note stating that cross-access will be provided to the adjacent western parcel, and it added a note that relating to a future location of the cross-access on the site plan. Staff believes these changes are minor and do not warrant additional review at a zoning committee.
Okay. And as we approach these particular items in the flow of the evening, we'll vote for whether or not we'd like to send it back to committee or advance. Okay? So now we can move forward with our decisions.
So don't we need a motion on that?
Wait.
No, we're going to do it.
We were going to
on a
do it as
case-by-case
we got to
basis.
the items.
As they come up.
That was number 14.
We're doing
Remember,
it now?
12 and
Oh, gonna keep it in
13,
order?
we're in decisions. 12 and 13 were both
I
deferred,
think we
so
gotta give a quick
that was the
overview.
decision of number 14.
Yes. Let me read number 14, and then we can make that motion. Because I haven't read the motion, the entire petition yet, and we are on 14.
You have to say whether or not we're going to send it back.
It's not how it usually
I
works,
know,
but
correct.
Okay. Now we're moving forward with our decisions, and we're on agenda item number 14. Okay? That is petition number 2024-022 by QTR Development Partners and Sunset Road Partners, LLC. The location is approximately 12.11 acres located on the south side of Sunset Road, east of Oakdale Road, in the ETJ, with the closest Board of County Commission being number 2, District 2, Mrs. Leek, and the closest City Council being District 2, Mr. Graham. The current zoning is N1A, and the proposed zoning is N2ACD. The zoning committee voted 11-1 to recommend the approval of this petition, and staff recommends the approval of this petition as well. And as we just heard, there were some changes after the zoning committee met, and they were deemed as relatively minor. Can I get a motion to not send back item number 14 back to the zoning committee? Can I get a motion and a second?
so moved.
Second.
I have a motion and second. All in favor of not sending back item number 14 to zoning committee, raise hands. Anyone opposed? Okay, that is unanimous. Can I get a motion to
Just a
approve?
motion.
Sorry?
I would just want to clarify, that it's just a motion, because when we say a motion to approve, that's leading versus a motion, or however the motion goes, to either approve or deny.
Objection.
Okay, thank you both. Is there a motion to approve petition number 2024-022?
So moved.
I have a motion.
Crowd.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of
Mayor Pro Tem.
approving?
I just want to make sure it's approve and adopt the motion of.
Yes, approve and
Consistency.
adopt
Abstained.
the statement of consistency.
Dude, chill out.
He's from the cheap seats.
I know. I have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? All right, that is unanimous. We will move on to item number 15, petition number 2024-029 by Emory Development Company. The location is approximately 19.81 acres, located on the south side of Alexandriana Road, east side of Statesville Road, and west of Twin Lakes Parkway, north of I-485 in the ETJ, closest to District 1 for the Board of County Commissioners, and closest to District 4, Ms. Johnson, for City Council. The current zoning is OFC. Proposed zoning is IMUCD. The zoning committee recommended 5-1 to recommend the approval of this petition, and staff does not recommend the approval of this particular petition. We also heard that there were additional items that changed after the zoning committee casted their vote. Is there a motion to?
Motion to approve and adopt.
No,
Well,
motion not to send back.
First, we need the motion to not send back to,
We didn't get, they needed to read it to say whether or not it was something that needed to be sent back.
Our parliamentarians on the warpath.
Can I get a motion to not send back
Don't we
item
have to read it
15?
Yeah, we need to hear
They
from
have to
staff
read it.
about
Yes.
what the changes are.
They need to read what the changes
We're
were.
doing so well.
No, what, no,
I
Joe.
don't think they
That's
told
what
us
I
about this one.
It's back to school time.
Mr.
They've been on
Mr.
vacation
Pett-
too long.
6 weeks.
Hang on,
6
Mr.
weeks is a
Patton.
long time.
Mr. Patton, approach the bench.
Can we hear the
Oh, that was
changes
funny.
for item number 15?
Certainly. For item number 15, there was one note added after the zoning committee meeting, and that was the petitioner added the note to, related to a contribution of $200,000 to the City of Charlotte Affordable Housing Trust Fund prior to the issuance of the first CO for the site.
Okay, thank
Move
you.
not to send back to.
Second.
I have a motion not to send back and a second. All in favor of not sending back to the zoning committee, raise hands. Any opposed? That is unanimous. Is there a motion to approve and adopt the zoning committee's statement of consistency for agenda item
Move to
number
approve and
15?
adopt.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise
Can I
hands.
Comment, please?
Mr. Driggs?
So I just want to know quickly, the staff does not recommend this. I don't take the decision to vote for something against the recommendation of staff lightly. I feel their analysis of the applicability of our policy was appropriate, but in my mind, this is a situation where the application of the policy doesn't really fit the circumstances. So this was offered for the intended use, the staff's intended use. No transaction was possible. So again, greatest of respect for the staff, but I feel it's in our interest to go ahead and move this one forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mayfield, did you have a comment?
Thank you. So our colleague, Councilmember Brown, did thankfully
Not Brown.
send.
Johnson.
Right, Councilmember Brown, my apologies. Councilmember Johnson did send us an email in response to this, but I also want to share that I appreciate staff's idea, but this particular area, as was alluded to by my colleague, more than 20 years, they were not able to develop what we thought would happen in their area. So I appreciate the fact that the petitioner listened to the district representative, to members of the community, made a contribution, has in here some housing affordability for a segment of our community that needs access to it, made additional commitments for sidewalk improvements, not just for their specific property, but even extending beyond, as well as contributing to our housing trust fund as we continue to see major growth in the city. So although it is not in as a slight to our staff, which does an amazing job, for this particular project, it seemed like this development would be one that would hit our goals of our 10-minute neighborhoods, as well as create housing diversity in the area where there are jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comment? Ms. Molina?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just really quickly, I wanted you to elaborate, because I asked earlier just to get some clarification, because again, as my colleagues have stated, I don't want to be redundant here, but really understanding what your policy position was. Can you just give like a high-level view of what that was, just for public records, so that we can put that
Certainly.
out there?
So the property today is in the manufacturing and logistic place type, and as is most of the property surrounding it. The petitioner is seeking the IMU zone to develop a wholly residential project, multifamily stacked project. From a policy perspective, that is not a type of development that we would support with the adjacencies of the manufacturing and logistics occurring around it. Moreover, that's still a viable manufacturing and logistic area. We've recently approved several projects for manufacturing. There's auto repair, auto dealership surrounding that. We've had a couple other petitions come in recently for pre-submittal meetings for manufacturing and logistics. So based on those characteristics, we did not feel this was the best location for this multifamily project. Nothing against it, is the developer has done great strides to make it a good project, and I don't doubt that. It's just really came down to the policy and where that directs us to locate multifamily residential projects such as this.
No, I, like my colleagues, appreciate the work of staff, and quite often, it's something that we lean on, because you really lean into this work before we actually have a touch point with it. So we depend, one, on your work and the acumen that you lend to this process, as well as, our commissions. So I just wanted to, acknowledge that I also will be supporting the council member, due to the fact that this has been a longstanding opportunity, for more than a decade now, without any, interest in development. And I feel like that based on that assessment, it would be worth supporting. And I think that if there's an appetite to, diversify this particular area with that type of project, then I'm willing to support it to see that through. So thank you again for your work. And that's all I have, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Ms. Molina. I too will be supporting Councilmember Johnson on this particular petition. I spoke with staff earlier at length about this petition and understand where this petition has been and this part of the city has been for a while. So I will be supporting Ms. Johnson as well. I believe we have a motion and a second. Deputy Clerk, is that correct, to approve? Okay. All in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? That is unanimous. And Memorial Gardens. The location is approximately 10.65 acres, located on the east side of West Sugar Creek Road and north side of the Roman Road, west of Mineral Springs Road, in District 4, Ms. Johnson's district. The current zoning is N1B. Proposed zoning is IC1. The zoning committee voted 6-0 to recommend approval of this petition, and staff recommends the approval of this petition as well. Is there a motion to approve this petition and adopt the zoning committee's consistency statement as it appears?
Adopt consistency
Second.
statement.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on agenda item number 16? All in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? That is unanimous. We now will move on to our hearings this evening, and we will begin with agenda item number 2021. And, okay. As I mentioned earlier, if there's no opposition, we will hear from staff, and then the petitioner will have an opportunity to discuss the petition. And we'll start with agenda item number 21, petition number 2024-094 by the City of Charlotte Planning, Design, and Development Department. It's a text amendment. The purpose of this text amendment is to modify the Unified Development Ordinance to address minor administrative items related to the tree preservation account and neighborhood character overlay, and to correct Scrivener's errors. The staff recommends the approval of this petition, and I will hand it over to staff for their presentation. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So our first item is a public hearing on text amendment 2024-094, probably one of the most straightforward text amendments we'll have. Just to talk through the three changes that are essentially composed in this. Article 14 is our special purpose and overlay districts. That's where our things like our neighborhood character overlay, our residential infill overlay, historic district overlays all live in the UDO. As we were going through the exercise of working with some communities on the neighborhood character overlays that are currently in process, there was some language that we noticed that was a carryover in there. It's not existing in any of the other overlay districts that we have, and it essentially states, clarifies some things about deed restrictions. And so we didn't see that language anywhere else. The code in the UDO is silent on deed restrictions, as it really technically should be. Those are private agreements. The city doesn't get involved in reviewing or enforcing any of those. So this change for Article 14 would remove just a statement that reads that it cannot modify any standards located within existing declarations of covenants and restrictions. Again, that's just to make it consistent with all of our our other overlay districts and really clarifies that, again, staff is not involved in researching or enforcing or implementing any of those deed restrictions. So that's the first change. The second change, as mentioned, also has to do with our tree preservation section of the ordinance. We all understand we have a fund that we collect funds when people do payment in lieu for tree save, and there's a certain pot that money goes into, which we can then use for other tree initiatives. Really just needed to clarify and change the word of fund to something different. I think it changes to account now, and that is so that those funds can be dispersed. There's just some challenges with the word funds when it comes to disbursement of those funds through strategy and budget. So working with them, we identified that that was an issue. So we've changed that word to essentially just read how it needs to, so those heritage tree mitigation payments and other payments in lieu can be dispersed out through that fund and used as they were intended to. And that's essentially the same for the enforcement section. So anywhere that we had that word fund when it came to tree preservation, that had to then be changed to account. So that also can clarify where that collected fine revenue gets deposited and then dispersed out of. So just three really basic cleanup changes, nothing overarching that has any real policy implications, just some cleanups that we've identified through staff implementation, and then again, working with strategy and budget on those mitigation funds. So be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Pettin. Are there any comments? Ms. Mayfield?
Thank you. Mr. Patton, and if team up top can go back to the last slide. So help me understand the clarification. We're changing the language to remove it from fund. Currently, those funds can only be used to be dispersed for tree-related. So by changing the language from fund to account, what does that do?
Doesn't change what they can be used for, just changes the ability to then disperse them through strategy and budget.
So, again, just for clarification, if it doesn't change where it's going, what was the challenge in strategy and budget for them to allocate the funds?
We've got some folks here that maybe can clarify the technicality of it, but it doesn't change what it can be used for. So it doesn't open it up to using those funds for anything other city initiatives. It has to be used for the same thing. It's just essentially, again, changing that word. But I'll let Tim explain a little bit more.
Fund to account, why?
Thanks, Dave. Good evening, Council. Tim Porter, Urban Forester. It's really just a preference from strategy and budget to be more comfortable. There was some understanding of fund being a very specific type of account that as we move into the new accounting system Workday in the future, there was some uneasiness with that account or its equivalents. If you dig into the red line, it says accounts or its equivalents. It's just a comfort level long-term that just better aligns with the preferences of strategy and budget in our future accounting system Workday.
So it truly is just an even name change. It's not changing any of the accountability of it.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Ms. Molina?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Article 14, David, can you give me some understanding of, especially with East Charlotte, I get a lot of interest in the overlay district. Tell me what exactly we're updating so that me and the community can understand that.
So we're updating the language that's in there. There's a sentence that refers to, again, those declarations of covenants and restrictions, just commonly referred to as deed restrictions. And it creates some confusion as to, is staff responsible for reviewing and enforcing those or not moving forward things that meet city standards because there may be a conflict with those deed restrictions? Again, all of our other overlay districts and the UDO in its entirety is silent on deed restrictions as it should be. We don't have any ability to get involved in those. Those are private party agreements. And so it's essentially just removing that sentence. So it's just clear that, as all the other overlay districts, that's not a staff responsibility. Doesn't mean that private property owners can't still take action and enforce those deed restrictions through their own mechanisms. And it doesn't mean that they can, don't have any mechanism to enforce those. It just means it clarifies that the city isn't the responsible party.
And again, that's something that's outside of our ability to even touch the scope of what that might mean, right?
Yeah.
Just for clarification?
Exactly.
Is there some kind of published document that we're going to give as a result of this, or?
The published document would just be the UDO with that sentence removed, and that's the red line version that's online now. It just shows that sentence being struck, and then just a renumbering of that section to just go back to, now the B2 is gone, B3 becomes B2, et cetera. So that's the one thing that will change. We can always put out some messaging through our own planning department channels to say this was an update. Again, it doesn't provide any real effectiveness on anyone's ability to, again, enforce those or say, hey, our community has these deed restrictions. What do we do to move those forward? That's just all a private party matter.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. If I have no other comments, can I get a motion to close public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? That's unanimous. We will move on to agenda item number 22, petition number 2023-156 by Plant for Partners, Inc. The location is approximately 16.08 acres located on the east side of East W.T. Harris Boulevard, north of Rocky River Road, and west of John Russell Road in District 4, Ms. Johnson's district. The current zoning is N1A. Proposed zoning is OFC. Staff recommends the approval of this petition. And after staff's presentation, Mr. Steve Farney will have 10 minutes to present. And is Mr. Kevin Hull here? Mr. Hull, you will have 10 minutes, and then there will be an opportunity for a 2-minute rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you. The site is approximately a 16-acre undeveloped parcel located on the east side of W.T. Harris Boulevard, north of Rocky River Road. For context, there is an established residential area to the east of the site, and Duke Energy is located across W.T. Harris to the west. The W.T. Harris corridor in this area includes a mix of residential support and office uses. The request is to rezone the site from N1A to Office Flex Campus. The aforementioned residential development to the east is zoned N1A. However, several properties to the north and south fronting on W.T. Harris are zoned O1, which is a legacy district, which translates to the OFC zone. The 2040 policy map calls for a variety of place types along this segment of W.T. Harris, including manufacturing and logistics, neighborhood center, and neighborhood 1. The subject site has a place type of neighborhood 2. Staff recommends approval of this petition as the requested OFC zone is consistent with the existing mix of zoning and development along W.T. Harris Boulevard. Access to goods and services has been identified as a high priority need in the area, and the petition could facilitate Goal 8, related to diverse and resilient economy. Approval of this petition will change the place type from neighborhood 2 to campus. I'm here if you have any questions.
Thank you. I would also just underscore that this is a conventional rezoning petition with no associated site plan. Mr. Farney, please come down to this podium here, and you will have 10 minutes to speak. And Mr. Hull, if you'd like to come down as well to be ready for the 10 minutes after Mr. Farney's complete.
Right over there, sir.
Sir, you can
Right
go
behind
to right behind you.
Behind you.
The podium right
Take a
behind you.
step up. Be careful. Watch your step.
There you go.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Steve Farney, and I'm the developer on this site. And I'm not going to take that much time because the owners right now is the Seventh-day Adventist. This is their district headquarters there, and this is land they've owned for over 35 years. And up until now, the only pursuers they've had wanted to build either apartment complexes or a school. And what I developed, and I've done 12 of these in Charlotte area, is one-story professional parks, very low density. We had a neighborhood meeting, and a group showed up, and they were excited about it because they didn't want to see an apartment complex in front of them or a school. And so that's really all I had to say. I'll be happy to answer any questions to the person that's opposed to it.
Thank you. Mr. Hull, please come down to this podium. You'll have 10 minutes as well.
Don't go far, you'll have.
Good evening, council. My primary concern, and maybe it sounds like the site concept was not a part of the zoning and staff review, but my, I think overall of seen the concept and spoken with some of the members, but my primary concern was with the tree conservation area proposed in the site concept between the residential plots of land and then the office development, that there's not a large buffer so that people were going to look out of their backyards, and instead of seeing trees and woods now, they would see a parking lot and offices. So I think the overall concept sits well with me, but as a member of the neighborhood, would like to request a larger buffer between that more commercial office space and the neighborhoods that are there now.
Thank you. Mr. Farney, you have 2 minutes for a rebuttal.
I'm not the engineer. I wish my civil engineer was here, but he's out of town. We're using the standard buffer between residential and commercial. And I don't really know what that is, but it's whatever is on the books for that zoning. There's a lot of tree conservation, and those houses will not be looking on a parking lot. The buildings are going to be on the perimeters, and the parking will be in the center. So the neighborhood will only see the back of the buildings, but you'll have to look through, I think, 75 feet of buffer area. If you look at the map, that area just above the area in question is that I've got 2 buildings that is exactly what we're going to build, and we have that exact situation. And we've been there for 22 years, and there hasn't been any problem. It's very quiet operation. It's all professional centers, and that'll be what the new one is. So we do have a large tree conservation. Out of the roughly 12 acres that we'll be developing, about 5 of it is going to be maintained in trees. There's a large triangle area in the center of the park that will be maintained as trees with paths through there with picnic tables and things. So we're very aware of that as an ambiance and a benefit to the park in general.
Thank you. Ms. Mayfield.
Thank you. Don't go too far away. Stay close by. But this question might be for staff. We note in here that Charlotte Water currently does not have the water system accessible for the rezoning boundary under review. So help me understand how we're here with a recommendation from staff and committee if we already know we're having challenges with access to water.
This is a conventional zone, so there are items that will be addressed at the time of permitting, depending on what's proposed.
Okay, that doesn't really help me because so I'm going to try to ask the question a different way so that I can play catch up. We just had a major incident within Uptown Charlotte regarding Charlotte Water 3.5, 4 weeks ago. If we know clearly that Charlotte Water is stating that the closest water distribution main is approximately 350 feet north of the rezoning boundary, and again, Charlotte Water currently does not have water system accessibility, why will we even move something forward if there's a greater chance that this is a project that can be delayed?
I think from a staff perspective, we are looking at the appropriateness of the zone for this site, not specifically at the develop. If this were a conditional plan and there's specific development proposed, then we would probably take a deeper dive in the availability of utilities. But at this time, whether they're going to just market it in the future for an office development, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Patton, but that's my approach.
Come on up, Dave.
Yeah, so just real quick on that stuff for water and sewer, when we see that kind of comment, it doesn't mean the site can't be served. It doesn't mean they don't have capacity to serve the site. It just means they don't have a line in the area of the site. So if it's going to be extended to provide service for water, sewer, it'll have to be at the developer's dime and their own expense. We won't, the city doesn't pay for that extension. So it doesn't mean that there's not capacity. It just means that they have to extend that out, and when they do, they come in for permitting, they have to then put in the lines on their own cost rather than the city having it already there. So it doesn't mean they can't develop the project, just means there's an additional expense per the developer.
Thank you. Mr. Farney, two questions for you. One question, is there a possibility for the consideration of the tree buffer versus a good bit of it being in the middle of the development for their amenity, that we maintain undisturbed buffer between that residential? Because we know fall tends to happen, even though we're losing seasons. When all those leaves fall, you kind of want to make sure that what you're looking at, because also there's potential environmental impacts with the vehicles, the gas, the talking, radio, whatever it is. Is there a possibility that you all can you can work with your engineer to identify more undisturbed buffer space between the residential and your property versus more of the tree save going in the middle of the property?
Well, we're going to do the middle of the property anyway. It's not going to affect the number of square feet that we can get. And I don't know if you would ask me about the buffer on the street.
Between the residential. So the
residential.
question that Mr. Hall had regarding the residential and your property, is there a possibility that you and your engineers can have a discussion of maintaining a little more of the natural undisturbed tree area versus clear cutting and then planting?
So are you saying, can we do more than what the zoning requires right now? Is that the question?
Well, you can always do that, but what I'm asking is
Okay.
if y'all can have a conversation in order to try to meet with Mr. Hall and some of the other residents.
Sure.
Meet a little further to the middle to create a buffer that will enhance the neighborhood as well as your property.
Sure, we can have that discussion. We've got plenty of room in the middle. I mean, we're only putting 85,000 square feet in 12 acres, so you can see the density is very, very low.
And I need
Say
to
what,
interrupt. Councilmember Mayfield. We have to be very careful because we don't have a site plan and it's conventional, so any use is allowed in office flex.
Right.
Are allowed, so he can't, since
Thank
it's
you,
not
Ms.
conditional.
Hagler-Gray,
He's not,
for
he
that
can't commit to
reminder.
anything.
I appreciate that. But yet, since Mr. Hall has some design that he has seen, whatever that design is that we don't have, I'm just asking if you can have a consideration to continue communication with the neighbors.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We want to be good neighbors. We have been for 22 years down the street, and we're not going to violate that. We're going to work with the neighborhood.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Do I have a motion
Move to close.
Second. I have a motion and second. All in favor of closing public hearing? Any opposed? That is unanimous. We will move on to agenda item number 23, petition number 2023-165 by Central Ave Multifamily LLC. The location is approximately 2.839 acres bound by the south side of Central Avenue, west side of Piedmont Street, north side of Sunnyside Avenue, and east side of Independence I-277 ramp in District 1, my district. The current zoning is N1D, NC 06CD, and the proposed zoning is CAC 1EX. Staff recommends the approval of this petition upon resolution of outstanding issues related to infrastructure and requested technical revisions. And after staff's presentation, Mr. Keith McVeigh will have 10 minutes, and Bethany Gooch and Craig Miller will have 10 minutes to speak in opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. This site is just under 3 acres along Central Avenue, Piedmont Street, and Sunnyside Avenue. Located in the Sunnyside portion of the Elizabeth neighborhood, there are a mix of uses along this section of the Central Avenue corridor which service the surrounding residential areas. The site is currently zoned Neighborhood Center, Neighborhood 1D, and Office Conditional. That Neighborhood Center zoning is as a result of the pedestrian overlay that used to be on the site, automatically translating that portion to NC. The petitioner is proposing Community Activity Center 1 exception, which is a conditional rezoning request. And this petition is consistent with the Community Activity Center place type that's recommended for a majority of the site and is inconsistent with the Neighborhood 1 designation on the 2 southeastern parcels on the site. The proposal itself is for up to 315 multifamily units, as well as up to 5,000 square feet of commercial or retail space that'd be unrelated to the multifamily development, so it kind of services like a leasing office, for example. EX petitions allow for modifications to certain UDO standards in exchange for public benefits. And the benefits provided by the petitioner in this rezoning includes the development of a 16-foot publicly accessible shared use path, the relocation of the existing sewer line, and 9,000 square feet of amenitized public plaza space along the shared use path and at the intersection of Piedmont and Sunnyside. The plan requests modifying the height plane restrictions for portions of a building within 200 feet of the Neighborhood 1 place type. There are 2 areas identified in this site plan where these height plane modifications will occur. One area will be along this western boundary, and one area is along the northeastern boundary, as shown on that site plan. This exception request modifies the maximum building height from 65 feet to 85 feet, and that's only limited to the areas that are specified on that plan. The height plane restrictions for portions of a building within 100 feet of Neighborhood 1 will be maintained so that the building is no more than 50 feet tall in that 100-foot radius. The petitioner is also requesting to reduce the minimum ground floor height from 14 to 10 feet where non-residential space may occur, and the final EX request is to reduce the ground floor transparency levels where non-residential space may occur, except where non-residential space may occur, The petitioner commits to fund a traffic signal at Central Avenue and Piedmont Street and up to 3 speed humps or other equivalent traffic calming measures within a year of securing the final certificate of occupancy. A comprehensive transportation review was completed as part of this rezoning process, and mitigation measures were identified and committed to in the conditional notes. The petitioner will relocate the existing curb line along Central Avenue to allow for the construction of a buffered bike lane per the Charlotte Streets map, and they will reserve right-of-way along the site's western edge for future acquisition by CATS for the Silver Line. Several architectural standards are specified that are mindful of the site's transition to the surrounding single-family uses, and staff recommends approval of this petition upon resolution of the requested technical revision. The requested EX provisions for transparency, ground floor height, and architectural standards are in response to the specific elevation characteristics of the site as well as its location along future transit infrastructure. The other EX provision being requested for flexibility in the height plane standards required for sites near Neighborhood 1 place type. And although this petition would modify that maximum building height from 65 to 85 feet in those 2 portions, these portions of the structure would not be immediately adjacent to any single-family uses, and the site's maximum height would be concentrated along Central Avenue and the western edge, which will abut the transit line. The public benefits procured in this petition would support pedestrian and transit infrastructure. The 16-foot shared use path would serve as a vital pedestrian connection for the community, utilizing transit to access the nearby amenities along Central Avenue. And this path will be properly amenitized in a way that is consistent with our existing pedestrian paths along transit lines. As part of this redevelopment of the site in anticipation of future transit infrastructure, the petitioner also commits to relocating the existing sewer line, and that shifts what is typically a pretty big financial burden away from the city and to the petitioner. Separately from the EX benefits outlined in this plan, the petitioner will still utilize bonus menu provision options from Article 16 in the UDO to achieve any height above 80 feet. Recognizing that this site is adjacent to single-family uses, they created several architectural standards that will allow for a more compatible buildings design along Sunnyside and Piedmont. And again, they are maintaining that 50-foot height cap where within 100 feet of Neighborhood 1 which further transitions to the single-family uses. There's also 65-foot height step-down that's interior to the site in between the 85-foot and the 50-foot height zones. Although this petition is located at the edge of a single-family residential area, the majority of the site and Central Avenue is recommended for community activity center, and that place type envisions mixed-use mid-sized developments along transit corridors. So densification should be encouraged in areas like these which front major arterials, which Central Avenue is, and will also be along future transit routes. This petition sufficiently balances the goals of that CAC place type and provides adequate public benefits to justify the EX request. And I'll take any questions following the community and petitioner's comments.
Thank you. Mr. McVeigh?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, members of the zoning committee. Keith McVeigh with Moore Van Allen. Jeff Brown of our firm and I are assisting Republic Metropolitan, the petitioner, on this request. With me tonight, representing the petitioners, Adam McMichael and Dennis Walls. They're available to answer questions. I want to thank Holly and the staff for helping us with this request. Holly's done a great job outlining what the request is about and where we are. As she mentioned, a site located on Central Avenue adjacent to the Sunnyside neighborhood, which is a residential neighborhood right behind us. Also, that neighborhood is also part of the Elizabeth neighborhood. Before we filed this petition early on, we started meetings on the site with the residents of Sunnyside to get input on the petition. We've made a lot of changes to the petition request that you see before you tonight as a result of input from those meetings. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to address all their concerns. I think there is a number of speakers here tonight to address you regarding their concerns. Next slide. So as Holly mentioned, a variety of zoning districts for this site: NC, Old Legacy Conditional, as well as N1D. It is, as Holly mentioned, a majority of the site is supported by the 2040 place type map. A small portion, or a third or a quarter of the site is inconsistent. The rezoning would make the site totally consistent with the plan by using CAC. We have limited height, building height. We have limited density. As Holly mentions and the planning department mentions in their staff analysis, this is a transitional location. And one of the things that we've worked hard to do here is to try to propose a conditional plan that does make a transition from Central Avenue, a 4-lane, heavily trafficked corridor adjacent to transit, which is adjacent to a future transit location, as well as in close proximity to the existing Lynx Gold Line, a stop on Hawthorne. Also has existing bus service on the site. So we wanted to make a transition from those public infrastructure improvements. The site also has access to the future Cross Charlotte Trail, which is directly across Central Avenue from the site. So in trying to transition between that more intense corridor and the single-family neighborhood to the rear, we spent a lot of time on design, how the building lowers in building height from 85 feet along Central to a maximum height of 50 feet at Sunnyside and Piedmont. Added additional amenities in terms of open space, enlarged setbacks. We heard a lot of concerns from the residents about traffic and parking in the neighborhood. So we've worked to design the access to be on Piedmont, closer to Central Avenue, where it would have access, hopefully, to a potential future signal, which the petitioner has agreed to fund, subject to CAT's, not CAT's, but CDOT's approval of the future signal. I also will mention that in regards to the Cross Charlotte Trail, the city of CDOT is actually funded and will be adding a pedestrian activated signal on Central that will provide the residents of this community, as well as the residents of Sunnyside, a neighborhood access to the Cross Charlotte Trail at a signalized or pedestrian crossing. That trail connection also lines up with, as one of the amenities that Holly mentioned, a 16-foot multi-use path that will be built by the petitioner along Independence that links the future transit station to the Sunnyside neighborhood and to the Cross Charlotte Trail. Can't say that fast. We also added a provision that said we would provide 20% more parking, that is the minimum that is required by the ordinance, again, to address concerns from the neighbors about parking. We also worked with the city to not relocate the curb on Sunnyside and Piedmont so that on-street parking along those streets along our frontage would not be possible. and residents would be encouraged to park in the parking structure within the facility. This just shows you what the future impact of the Silver Line will be on the site. That area has been reserved and set aside for the construction of the Silver Line. There's improvements in terms of sewer line relocation that are being done as part of the development of the site with this. Access, as I mentioned, was originally when we first started this, we had an access point on Sunnyside Avenue. We heard a lot of comments about the potential impact of that. It actually would work well for this development to have access to Sunnyside, but we eliminated that and moved access, vehicular access, to Piedmont at hopefully what will be a future signal funded by the developer. We are working with CDOT to get that accomplished as part of the development of the site, have agreed to do a traffic warrant analysis as part of that. And as I mentioned earlier, this is the future pedestrian signal at the intersection of the Cross Charlotte Trail and the proposed 16-foot multi-use path that's part of this development. Two height exceptions that Holly mentioned quickly to increase building height above what's allowed. This along Central, 85 feet here, and 85 feet here, again along Independence Boulevard and adjacent to the future Silver Line station. We are in compliance with the UDO in regards to building height as it adheres to the residential neighborhood. This exception is really based on this small remnant piece of Independence Park that's called N1 place type, so the code actually restricts height based on that, even though it cannot be developed with residential uses. And then there's a number of other exceptions regarding mixed-use buildings and how that, because of our adjacency to the future transit line, which is elevated above the site, we wanted some relief on the mixed-use provisions design standards. The site will meet the residential design standards, and as Holly mentioned, we will meet the commercial design standards where the 5,000 square feet of commercial area would be located along Central Avenue. There's a minimum commitment to no less than 1,500 square feet. So again, public, in terms of amenities, public open space at the corner here, public open space here to help with the transition, limited height, agreement to fund a traffic signal to help with traffic within the neighborhood and from the future development that occurs here. Larger setbacks along Piedmont and Sunnyside to move the building back and create a better transition. Commitments to specific architectural treatments regarding balconies and porches that would project out from the main building to create a more of a scale down. There are 3-story balconies and porches, direct access to Sunnyside from these units, and then the units along Piedmont would also orient toward them, but because of grade, would not potentially have access to Piedmont itself. And then lastly, just again, these commitments to architectural treatment along Sunnyside, streetscape improvements, stoops and porches with direct access, trying to create a residential to residential use transition where the residents of this community feel part of the Sunnyside neighborhood and vice versa. So a lot of work to try to make that integration as seamless as possible. We're happy to answer questions.
Great, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Bethany Gooch and Craig Miller, you make your way down to the podium. You will have 10 minutes in aggregate to address this petition.
Good evening. My name is Craig Miller, and I'm an 18-year resident of the Sunnyside neighborhood, which is adjacent to the proposed development in this hearing. And I had some exhibits. Did those get passed out?
We're passing them around now.
Got it. All right. I'm joined here by neighbors who stand together in our opposition to this rezoning. They're up there. And I will be followed by Bethany, as you know. Sunnyside is a small and tight-knit community that, while a part of the historic Elizabeth neighborhood, was largely cut off after the widening of Independence. If you look at Exhibit 1, you'll see that it's also bounded by the busy streets of Central and Hawthorne. This isolation, I believe, has played a large part in why our neighborhood is so tight-knit. But our location has become somewhat more of a curse lately as it is increasingly a target for large-scale development. If you would please turn to Exhibit 2, you'll see there I included all the fairly recent and upcoming or potential developments that surround our neighborhood. I won't go through all of them, I have them listed, but if you could take a moment maybe later to get a sense of how our neighborhood is undergoing lots of pressure from development. Now, we recognize that properties along Central and Hawthorne are zoned for higher density uses and understand the importance of that in a quickly growing city and urban core area. This particular rezoning, however, is very different because it includes those two properties, zoned Neighborhood 1 and 1D, that were recently purchased by Skyla Credit Union and are included in the development and would be included in the sales transaction if it happens. These two properties front Sunnyside Avenue within the interior of our neighborhood and had single-family detached homes on them. Exhibit 3, page 3, shows the one still standing, which is an example of the beautiful historic homes in our neighborhood. And I'd like to point out that Elizabeth is a historic district on the National Register of Historic Places, and there's currently an effort underway to establish local historic district for Elizabeth. Rezoning these two N1 parcels, to me, is a dangerous precedent-setting threshold. If you look at Exhibit 4, that helps to maybe understand why. If the rezoning of these two N1 parcels is allowed, it invites developers to do the same thing with similar properties within the interior of the neighborhood. From there, it would only be a matter of time before they would chip away at the rest of the neighborhood, and this is the kind of thing that ruins neighborhoods. Additionally, this is an exception conditional rezoning. As such, the developer is requesting modifications to zoning standards in exchange for including features deemed as public benefits. One request is to increase the height to 85 feet, which Keith mentioned, which will allow more apartments to be built, thus more money for the developer. The others include significant reductions in ground floor height and transparency, also shared earlier, both of which will detract from the architectural appeal. None of these supposed public benefits offered in exchange for the exceptions come anywhere close to making up for the negative consequences of the requested exceptions and are hardly much, if any, benefit for the Sunnyside community. One is the multi-use pathway that was described, combined with a linear open space plaza, which were asked for by CATS because of the potential light rail stop next to the development. Another public benefit was the relocation of the sewer line. As you're aware, light rail is no longer the plan for the eastern section of the Silver Line, so these benefits are no longer relevant since they'd be built for something that won't be happening. It isn't funded. The desire for higher density residential next to a light rail station also becomes less relevant. In exchange for these and other lackluster offers couched as benefits, Republic Metropolitan stands to earn substantially more money by building higher and reducing ground floor architectural value. The bar for granting exceptions should be set much higher. There's very little public benefit, and the development will have significant negative impacts on the surrounding neighborhood in terms of cut-through traffic and resulting safety issues, more on-street parking in a neighborhood where many properties don't have driveways, more people allowing their dogs to use our lawns as their bathroom, and so on. One other major issue concerns traffic. If you look at the last exhibit, one entrance slash exit is being allowed on the side street for all 315 units. Now, Keith pointed out that originally they had entrance on Sunnyside, which we didn't want. What he didn't show is the original plan also had an entrance on Central, which was canned by CDOT, I understand. So that left the one, which is not really what we wanted because it funnels all the traffic through our neighborhood because there's no light at Central Avenue that makes it harder to get out on Central Avenue and make your turns. We already see this with another apartment complex that was built in our neighborhood. In my opinion, this development is another prime example of corporate greed where development companies ask for rule and policy changes and walk away with millions in their pockets, while the existing residents and community not only don't get benefits in return, but suffer with the long-term nuisance-ridden consequences of mundane, inconsistent development. Thank you.
Ms. Gooch, you have 4 minutes left.
Okay, I'll get to the meat of it. Good evening, Madam Mayor Pro Tem and City Council members. Many of us here do believe that increasing housing density in neighborhoods like ours can improve affordability, optimize infrastructure, and reduce our carbon footprint by minimizing sprawl and protecting our natural resources. However, we believe there is a path to responsible development that can achieve these goals while also preserving the unique character of the existing neighborhood. Charlotte's 2040 Comprehensive Plan is a meticulously crafted document that balances specificity and flexibility, providing a vision for responsible growth with goals meant to reflect the voice of our community. Significant time, effort, and resources were invested in the development of this document. The requested zoning change by Republic Metropolitan serves as a crucial test of our commitment to integrating new developments responsibly into existing neighborhoods. When considering the proposed zoning change, our request for City Council is to uphold the intent of the 2040 vision and set a valuable precedent for future development proposals. Specifically, please consider the following. First, does this proposal fit with the vision of a community activity center place type as defined by the 2040 plan? Per the 2040 plan, this place type is for mid-sized, mixed-use areas typically along transit corridors or major roadways that provide access to goods, services, dining, entertainment, and residential for nearby and regional residents. Typical land use is mostly non-residential. These buildings have tall ground floors and a high degree of transparency using clear glass windows and doors designed for active ground floor uses to support a vibrant pedestrian environment. Public open spaces such as small parks and greenways and tree preservation areas are also an important feature. It also calls out transitions for building heights to be lower along edges abutting neighborhoods. Republic Metropolitan's plans do not align with the Community Activity Center designation because it includes less than 1% of total square footage dedicated to non-residential uses, with no detailed plan for this space. Only 25% ground floor transparency and only 10-foot ground floor height. The plan lacks the vibrant pedestrian environment and active ground floor uses that we seek, and there is insufficient commitment to public amenities and open spaces. In addition, the exceptions to maximum building heights are contradictory to the transition of scale a community activity center should have, as defined by the 2040 plan. Our ask for City Council is to require the developer to create plans that properly qualify this building for a community activity center place type in line with the 2040 vision. Please do not set the precedent that a community activity center place type can be a multifamily apartment building with taller height limits and almost no mixed use. This is not the intent of the 2040 vision and may actively work against establishing more 10-minute neighborhoods. Second, how can we challenge the developers to creatively incorporate N1 zoning into their plans? Rezoning the two N1 lots is a significant decision that will impact the surrounding neighborhood and set a precedent for future development. The 2040 plan aims to, quote, enhance the character of structures and communities that constitute the distinct places within the city. This area, our neighborhood, is a prime example of a distinct place where we can test this concept. The 2040 plan envisioned these N1 lots for a reason. They were serving as a transitional buffer and graduation of scale between the dense development on Central Avenue and the residential neighborhood of Sunnyside. In addition, goal number 9 of the 2040 plan is to retain our identity and charm. We should maintain a diversity of housing on this block. Not every part of the block needs to be densely developed merely because the developer requested it. In addition, the 2040 plan aims to increase the rate of restoration and adaptive reuse of existing
20 seconds
structures.
left. 20 seconds.
In summary, we're asking that you please do not set the precedent that community activity center place type can be multifamily apartment building with taller height limits and almost no mixed use. Please challenge Republic Metropolitan architects to flex their creative muscles to build their development while sustainably incorporating the two N1 parcels into their design. We hope you will not support this rezoning request. Thank you.
All right. Mr. McVeigh, you have 2 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. In regards to the comments from the residents, we've worked hard to create that transition. We understood from the beginning there were concerns about including the two parcels of Piedmont and Sunnyside, and that's why we worked diligently with the architect to look at context-sensitive design. The porches, the design of the porches and the stoops are based on at the architect looking at surrounding residential properties. Some of these neighborhoods do contain duplexes, triplexes, and quadruplexes, and it tries to mimic that. The actual design of those build units at that corner, we added an open space also at that corner to create that transition, something that's not required. And there's also 11,000 square feet of total open space as a benefit of public open space, again, something that's not required. In addition, in terms of the benefits, we felt, A, the open space was a benefit, the reservation and relocation, the reservation of right-of-way for the future transit, sewer line relocation, and expense at the cost of the developer instead of the city, not an insignificant expense. But we also, the exceptions regarding design are because it is a mixed-use building. There will be commercial space here, something the developer, if it agreed to do, not required to do, and there's up to 5,000 square feet of non-residential to create that mixed use. The area is not a great location at this point in time for commercial spaces, but the developer is willing to take that risk.
30 seconds.
Thank you. And then, so in terms of the design standards, we asked for exceptions. We are meeting the residential CA1 standards. It's when you bring in mixed-use standards that we want a slight deviation, again, because some of these residential units front on a future transit line that is elevated, and therefore the units, and there's no real market for commercial space along a 16-foot multi-use path, so that's where the deviations are there in that regard. Be happy to answer additional questions.
Thank you. I'm going to start with opening up the comments here. This petition has been in motion for quite some time. I've met with the petitioner, I've met with several community members, and I know that there's been a lot of community engagement, and I want to thank the community for coming out tonight to participate in the process. There were over 60 community members at the meeting, which is fantastic. And so I know that there's been a lot of give and take here on this particular petition. Couple questions for you. I've heard from many of the residents that they would actually embrace the introduction of goods and services in their community. And can you talk about the goods and services that are planned for this particular petition?
Thank you all. Thank you for your time. Adam McMichael with Republic Metropolitan. Look forward to all your comments and questions. We've looked at this site, this development in particular, over the last year with high aspirations for it being a high-functioning retail location. But regularly, we continue to receive feedback, and against our better expertise, that it's not an exceptional location for retail. There are also some grade issues with regards to the site that don't necessarily allow for what might be optimal heights on some of these retail commercial areas. And so until we continue to do further planning on that, it's hard for us to commit to an amount of commercial services above what we've put forth in our application. So we've stated that we would do 1,500 square feet of retail and commercial, and we're willing to go up to 5,000 square feet should the market demand it. We don't want vacant retail. I don't think that helps anybody. And then also should the further planning of the site architecturally allow for more retail space. We've heard loud and clear from the community that, or at least the neighbors, that they would like to see more goods and services. It's my opinion, coming from larger cities here, I would love to see something such as a bodega of some sort, right? A stop-in, grab coffee, grab a sandwich, grab a soda type location here. I think there's some collateral issues to that all things need to be considered, which is sometimes that leads to more traffic, sometimes that leads to more parking issues. Those are two things in our petition that we've gone to great lengths to get away from. But I'll just finish by saying, we've met with the Plaza Midwoods Merchants Association, and at this time we have their support in our proposal. And I think they understand more than most that we've spoken with in the community that the limitations of it being a fantastic commercial site versus what our proposal is. And so this is where we've landed at the moment, and we think that we could bring a good community use to the location, which, you know, optimally in my mind would be a bodega of some sort, right? A grab and go type situation, and I think that would benefit the community, or at least coming from the conversations that we've had.
Well, the community is very much involved, and I know that there have been conversations, but I think that is a perspective that the community can have a point of view and collaborate with you on what they would like to see in their area. I have a couple more questions on this one. And one of the residents that I spoke with earlier talked about this being a community activity center, and how does this particular corner, these particular parcels fit into the concept of community activity center. Can you share some insight on that?
Sure. So if we're talking about the community activity center place type, and Ms. Gooch, you did a good job representing what the intention is for community activity center place types. We're talking about mid-sized mixed-use developments. And the community activity center is recommended along really the majority of the Central Avenue corridor. So this is one piece of a larger community activity center strand that is contiguous here. What the proposal is including with their permitted uses as well as the design of the site is consistent with that community activity center place type. There is a mix of uses proposed. I recognize that maybe it's not as much commercial use as the community may prefer, but I'll also note that Community Activity Center 1, the zoning district, would allow for an entirely multifamily residential building. It doesn't have to have that inclusion of the non-residential space there, but they have added that in, recognizing what the place type really calls for. So when we talk about place types, we want to recognize what's also in the surrounding area and how this site will fit into that puzzle piece, really. So yes, it's mostly multifamily residential, but there are really a wealth of goods and services along Central Avenue. And a lot of the pedestrian improvements proposed in this petition are going to help create access to those existing goods and services, and it will add folks that live near those goods and services, as well as a small amount of commercial space on the site itself.
Okay. I also have another question. If someone from CDOT can approach the podium. Again, listening to the residents, not wanting to have the parking outage directly on Sunnyside. And I know the petitioner has listened to that, and so there's entry and exit on Piedmont. But what is the issue with also having entry, exit on Central as well, given that all of the traffic will be flowing into the neighborhood if it's only on Piedmont? Can you speak to why there can't be an additional entry, exit on Central Avenue?
Yes, thank you. Jay Carpenter with CDOT. So the greater principles have to do with access management. And so along a major arterial such as Central Avenue that carries significant traffic volumes as well as significant multimodal volumes with pedestrians and bicycles, the goals of a access management policy is to consolidate access across those points, so minimize crossings across sidewalks, across bike lanes, consolidate turning movements at smaller numbers of locations. And so what that does is enhance safety by reducing those conflict points and having driver expectations, multimodal expectations concentrated in smaller areas. And it's policies like that have been shown to increase safety, support our goals that are in Vision Zero, and factors like that. So we have our access management policy documented within our streets manual, which basically has an order of operations of where developments should get access based on the type of development, where it's located. And so along an arterial such as this, access should be from the side street to promote all of those access management policies and benefits that I outlined.
Thank you. I know that we've had some progress on this petition, but I feel like there's significant work needs to continue. Along Central Ave, you also have the Gibson apartment building, which is 250 apartments right there on the corner, and adding an additional 300-plus apartments will definitely add stress to what is already a highly congested, highly traveled corridor along Central, and I think we need to continue to be at the table with the community to work towards what a better ideal solution would be for them in this particular area. So I look forward to having those continued conversations. Are there any additional comments?
You can go first.
Okay, I have Mr. Driggs, Ms. Molina, and then Ms. Mayfield.
So this is a 2.8-acre site that currently has single-family residential, multifamily residential, commercial, institutional, office, and mixed-use developments. That seems like an awful lot on 3 acres. And when I look at the traffic analysis, the indication is that this petition would cause the total traffic count to go down by 70. That's just not intuitive to me. So what exactly is there now that generates 2,000 trips?
There was Skyla Credit Union headquarters was on the site. There's also a small lawyer's office, but it's mainly the existing credit union headquarters, or was their main branch of the credit union that generated that traffic.
So that's not current?
They have moved their operations, so they're not currently in the building any longer.
The CDOT memo reflects the entitlements under the current zoning because it has that neighborhood center zoning as well on the site. It's hard to determine the exact number of uses that could be, that the current entitlements allow. Sorry, it's hard to determine the exact number of trips that the current entitlements allow.
And Councilmember Driggs, if I can, I will say that we have, in an effort to engage the community further, we've gone above and beyond in this particular instance as well, whether it's intuitive to you, by gone ahead and completed a traffic management plan, looked at data, developed a scope for a signal warrant for that to be pursued after this plan. So, you know, those are things that might not necessarily be required, but we are doing already in advance of where we are today.
Understood. I'll just need to look at this in greater detail, but it just looks like a lot at that location. Anyway, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Ms. Molina.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I want to elaborate on that point that the Mayor Pro Tem made and my colleague, Mr. Driggs. You know, among us, I think, first of all, this is an area that I'm very familiar with. My kid has been a Piedmont pirate for a few years now. So, and I've traveled these roads twice a day, every day for a little bit. And I absolutely agree with the Mayor Pro Tem in that, you know, there's still work to do. I feel like that, you know, considering the area, density is already a reality for the neighbors, right? I think that there's always an equilibrium that when we're listening carefully and there's a good willingness that we can reach in these types of negotiations. So my hope is that with intent, there is an opportunity to do so. You know, and I do understand the Merchants Association. They are great partners. You know, but I always, and I think each one of us sitting here have those challenges in that we have the voices that are regularly at the table, and then we have the voices that we don't always hear. And maybe the community members that have, you know, driven in their vehicles today, they may be the voices that we don't always hear, but we have to invite those voices as well, right? I want to also commend the community members that put this together. I think it was, when I see a community member take the time to, you know, with comprehension, deliver something from your perspective, where it is, you know, demonstrative that you've actually taken a look at the scope of what we do and how we make our decisions, it really, it's heartening to me because this process is not easy for an individual to understand unless they take that additional time. So kudos to you for taking the time to do this. I think that, just looking at how you designed it and even was able to walk us through that, I really appreciate your work there. So, just going backwards, I'm glad we're in this stage. I trust the Mayor Pro Tem. She's extremely knowledgeable, and I do feel like that she can, guide both the community that trusts her and you guys to an equilibrium, something that works for both you and the community, if that's a possibility. And that's all I have, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Ms. Molina. Ms. Mayfield?
Thank you. I have a question for staff, just trying to understand. Back in June of this year, all of council received an email from the Plaza Midwood Business Association calling for lane reductions. It was soon after there was another road rage incident that happened in the area. The request was to reduce Central Avenue to 2 lanes of automatic traffic, as well as extending the existing protected bike lanes that terminated on East 10th Street and East 12th Street to extend along East 10th Street and Central Avenue. Was any of these conversations, since this was sent to all of council and I believe shared with planning staff, taken into consideration when we're looking at projects around this area?
I don't know if CDOT has more information about conversations, but I have not received that information. As was previously mentioned, though, a lot of the commitments made through this plan are considerate of pedestrian safety, and we believe could actually increase pedestrian safety with potential new signalization, traffic calming measures, the buffered bike lanes, and the new pedestrian shared use path.
Okay, so I also want to get an understanding, because we're still having a lot of conversations regarding the language in our 2040 policy, MAP, and the UDO. I have shared at different times the concerns that I have that our language is completely transitioning neighborhoods. This gives me concern because it appears to be in contradiction to our staying in place, aging in place, neighborhood continuity, neighborhood transition when we look at the development that's happened. Also, as a council, from years ago and current, we've had a number of conversations regarding what has developed along public transportation, i.e. light rail, and what has not, regarding who has access to this transportation when we have language and commitments around workforce development, economic development, 10-minute neighborhoods, and all these other things. So I'm trying to understand really the totality of staff's support and recommendation to approve this petition upon resolution of just basically technical revisions when there are so many other opportunities that were not addressed in this. So help me get to where you are.
Yeah, so I think you summarized, staff recommendations are complex, and it's hard in this rezoning process to assess which variables, but where there is clear guidelines in terms of our policy considerations when we make a staff recommendation. So the primary policy we're working off of is that 2040 comp plan and the place types that are in effect. And the place type designation here of community activity center is supported by the proposal itself, and we believe that the public benefits offered as part of this proposal were justification for the rezoning request itself. If it were something like, let's say, entirely single-family, active single-family uses on this site, I think that'd be a little bit different. But considering the existing entitlements and the planned transit around this site, we want to make sure that we're activating spaces along these major transit corridors to be appropriately dense, but also be mindful of the adjacent neighborhood 1 areas. And I think it's a tricky balance in areas like these, but this petition gets close at balancing that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bakari?
Just a quick note for staff. It might be a good idea for us to revisit our planning around things like the Silver Line, and things that we know aren't necessarily going to occur. We've kind of been ignoring that and wishing and willing it into existence for decades now. And we have a better line of sight as to what's going to happen, yet we leave our planning and policy documents in a kind of unreal world that's just still following that. So that's a complex statement, but we can't keep ignoring it. I never get applause in here. What's going on?
All right. He needs that.
Thank you all. I'll remember that forever.
Thank you, Mr. Bakari. I will say, I appreciate Plaza Midwood Merchants giving you sort of a letter of approval on this, but I also would like to say I've been in conversations with the ECA, and they're not in that position for that approval, and this particular petition sits in the Elizabeth neighborhood, so we really want to be cognizant of the neighbors and what they would like to see as they envision the future of the community. So lots of work to continue to be done on this one. I will also say, Ms. Mayfield, that there is a longer conversation around Central Avenue and the design of traffic flow, parking, et cetera. So much longer conversations with multiple neighborhoods along that corridor. So there is a lot of conversation going on and some strong desires to have a redesign there.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to close public hearing?
So moved.
Motion and second. All in favor, raise hands. That is unanimous. Thank you. We will move on to agenda item number 24, petition number 2024-061 by Charlotte PEC LLC. The location is approximately 1.9 acres bound by the north side of East Trade Street, the west side of North Davison, and the south side of East Fifth Street and east side of North Caldwell Street in District 1, my district. The current zoning is UC. Proposed zoning is UCEX. Staff recommends the approval of this petition upon resolution of outstanding issues related to transportation, site and building design, and environment, in addition to requested technical revisions. After staff's presentation, Mr. McVeigh will have 3 minutes to present your case, as there's no opposition signed up. Thank you.
Thank you. This site is just under 2 acres along North Caldwell, East Fifth, and North Davidson Street. This is just a short walk from where we are tonight, so if you want to do a site visit, it'd certainly be easy to do so. Property is currently zoned Uptown Core, and they are proposing Uptown Core exception. So this is another EX request like the last petition. And this is in the Regional Activity Center place type, and that this proposal is consistent with that Regional Activity Center place type. The proposal itself would allow for the development of practice facilities and associated uses as permitted in the Uptown Core District. The petitioner requests EX provisions and specifies that the required public benefits will include green building standards and a public art feature, which they will collaborate with Urban Design Center on that public art feature. Requests EX provisions to the site and building design standards, such as reducing the setback line to accommodate cantilevered space, reducing the minimum ground floor height for the parking structure portion of the building, and reducing minimum ground floor transparency. And again, that's because of the nature of these practice facilities and just kind of the unique use that we see here. They are requesting an EX provision to utilize the parking structure design option C in the UDO with a reduction from the active ground floor uses from 90% to 10%. They are requesting an EX provision to the tree planting standards, and they are still working on resolving some outstanding comments with urban forestry, but we expect that in a revised plan this week, assuming we're still on track for zoning committee in a couple of weeks, we expect those urban forestry comments to be resolved under collaboration with urban forestry. They are also requesting an EX provision to allow the existing curb to remain along North Caldwell and a portion of North Davidson, and an EX provision to allow signage on the site to display on-premises advertising or advertising associated with the adjacent arena parcel hosting the Hornets. They also may seek administrative approval of a master signage package. The site's primary access is along East Fifth, as indicated with those arrows, and there is a limited access drive that would be available through Caldwell or North Davidson. That limited access driveway labeled right there on the site plan would be for things such as service vehicles. The building facade along the southern site boundary will be treated with murals and/or other elements to create a visually interesting building facade until it is covered with adjacent development on the rest of the parking area. Staff recommends approval of this petition upon resolution of the outstanding issues. Sporting facility uses create unique zoning scenarios that challenge typical ordinance requirements, prompting the need for innovative standards or innovative solutions such as an EX conditional request. And these EX conditionals requests allow us to receive public benefits in exchange for those flexibilities in ordinance standards. Sporting facilities and the accessory uses that would be allowed in this petition have atypical site and building designs, so we believe that the EX request here is justified. And the site is currently underutilized as surface parking in the densest core of our city, so transitioning it to active uses is a much preferred utilization of this site that is in alignment with the Regional Activity Center place type. It would be easily accessed by various transportation options. I mean, it is 1/10 of a mile from the Charlotte Transit Center, so you could have access to the blue and gold lines as well as various bus routes, and redevelopment at this site would help to actively support our transit infrastructure. And I'll take any questions following the petitioner's presentation.
Thank you. Mr. McVeigh.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, members of the Zoning Committee. Keith McVeigh with Morven Allen assisting Charlotte Hornets with their rezoning for the Performance Enhancement Center. With me tonight representing the petitioner are Travis Ferguson, James Jordan, and Shannon Gillian, as well as Nate Doolittle and Bob. I'm not going to be able to pronounce her last name, Bob. With also assisting the Hornets on their rezoning for the site. As Holly mentioned, really a rezoning regarding technical issues of the urban center zoning district that don't transition or don't relate well to a facility like this where the Hornets are trying to build a performing enhancement facility or practice courts for their athletes and their organization. So a number of provisions to slightly modify some quantifiable standards of the urban center urban core district. As Holly mentioned, consistent with the area plan. We are working with CDOT, and we have come to an agreement on how to address their concerns regarding the curb line relocation along Davidson Street. There will be a commitment, there is a current commitment that there will be public parking on the site with some hours of use restriction, as some of the spaces are here for the tenants of the building and the use of the building, but after hours, there will be parking available to the public. There's also a commitment actually for parking for the visitors and tenants of this building to park at this facility as part of the agreement with the Hornets organization. In terms of urban forestry, we've come up with a solution, and we can remove that EX provision from the petition as a solution as to how to meet the tree ordinance on this site has been arrived at. And then there is a EX provision regarding signage to allow one additional wall sign along North Caldwell that could be an electronic or static sign. And again, trying to pick up on some of the signage theme from the current arena and bringing it across the street. There will be active spaces along Caldwell Street, ground floor active spaces, as well as the main entries to the facility in itself. This is an image of that corner. This is Caldwell, and this is this street going out of town. And that's where we are. Again, we plan to address all the comments, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. McVeigh. Of course, I've had conversations with the developers, and I'm very grateful that you're being thoughtful about the site and how it can integrate overall with the Spectrum Center, and so that it's a welcome addition to the community. So I appreciate the thought behind that and the intentionality behind that. Mr. Driggs.
I just wanted to say briefly, appreciate the team, your investment in Charlotte. This is a big project, and I think a plus for the city. So I expect we'll be able to navigate the rezoning. But thank you very much.
Absolutely. Any additional comments?
Move to close.
I have a motion and a second from Ms. Brown and Ms. Molina. All in favor, raise hands. That is unanimous. Thank you. We will move on to agenda item number 25, petition number 2024-015 by BV Belk Properties. The location is approximately .38 acres, located on the east side of Millhaven Lane, south of Sunset Road, and west of Statesville Road in District 2, Mr. Graham's district. The current zoning is I1CD. Proposed zoning is CG. Staff recommends the approval of this petition, and after staff's presentation, Ms. Grant will have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Petition 2024-015 is located on the east side of Millhaven Lane, south of Sunset Road, and west of Statesville Road. The site's approximately .38 acres. It's currently undeveloped. The site is a portion of a property zone I1CD, light industrial conditional, which was approved under petition 2020-025. The proposed zoning is CG, general commercial, a conventional district. The 2040 policy map recommends the manufacturing and logistics place type. CG district is inconsistent with the M&L place type. Approval of this petition would revise the 2040 policy map recommendation to the commercial place type. This is a conventional rezoning petition. There is not an associated site plan and would permit any uses in the CG district. Staff recommends approval of this petition as the site is bound by properties designated as commercial place type on 3 sides. The 2040 comprehensive plan calls for service and retail development to support workers in areas designated as manufacturing and logistics. The uses allowed in the CG zoning district would be more supportive of this goal, and the 2040 comprehensive plan identifies this area as an access to amenities gap, and the proposed CG district was better suited to fill that gap than the current I1 CD zoning district. I'm happy to take any questions following Mrs. Grant's presentation.
Thank you. Ms. Grant?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, members of the zoning committee. My name is Bridget Grant. I'm a land use consultant with Moore & Van Allen. Pleased to be here tonight with Randy Smith on behalf of BVB Properties. This is a pretty simple rezoning. It's actually even smaller than the .3 acres. We revised it at 0.243 acres. We're just attempting to add a little bit more onto the back of an existing CG site to have a better fit for future redevelopment of the site. We're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any comments, questions?
Move to close.
Second.
All in favor of closed public hearing, raise hands. That is unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Grant. We move on to agenda item number 26, 2024-052 by the Providence Group Capital. The location is approximately 1.58 acres located on the north side of West Woodlawn Road and west side of Wallingford Street, east of I-77 in District 3, Ms. Brown's district. The current zoning is CG. Proposed zoning is CAC1. Staff recommends the approval of this petition, and after staff's presentation, Mr. McVeigh will join us again. Thank you.
Last time.
Thank you. Petition 2024-52 is approximately 1.58 acres, located on the west side of Wallingford Street, north of Woodlawn Road, and south of Yeoman Road. It's currently developed with a parking lot and a small warehouse. Under the current zoning of CG, proposed zoning is CAC1 conventional. The 2040 policy map recommends commercial place type. So while it is inconsistent with the commercial place type recommendation, staff recommends approval. It is adjacent to Community Activity Center place type to the north and east. It's approximately a half-mile walking distance from the Woodlawn Blue Line station. The CAC1 zoning district is intended to accommodate areas that are transitioning from an automobile-centric orientation toward a more walkable, moderate intensity mix of uses. Petition could facilitate the comprehensive plan goal of 10-minute neighborhoods, and I will take any questions following petitioner's presentation.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Pro Tem, members of council, members of the zoning committee. Keith McVeigh, Moore Van Allen. Again, thank you for your time this evening. With me tonight representing the petitioner is J.Q. Freeman with Providence Group Capital. As Joe mentioned, a fairly simple request, or simple request, I guess, to rezone just under 2 acres to CAC1 to allow a different variety or a different mix of uses on the site. This is an area that's transitioning quickly, just south of the Loso area, which is just north of us, and actually we have connectivity to that area through Wallingford. And then just to the east is the Blue Line station, just over a half-mile away, and community activity center is actually recommended around it. So this zoning provides the petitioner and the owners of the property ability to add some additional uses to this area to help with the transition of this portion of the city. We're happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Any comments?
Move to close.
I don't have anything.
Can I get a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to close
waiting on
public
the rep.
hearing.
See if she was good, that's why.
All in favor, raise hands. It is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. McVeigh. We'll move on to agenda item number 27, petition number 2024-053 by JCB Urban Company. The location is approximately 1.698 acres, located on the north side of Softly Road, west of West Sugar Creek Road, and east of Hillcrest Street in District 1, my district. The current zoning is INST-CD and N1B. Proposed zoning is N1C. Staff recommends the approval of this petition, and after staff's presentation, Mr. David Murray will have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. This site is a little over 1.5 acres along the north side of Softly Road, west of West Sugar Creek and east of Hillcrest Street. This area is largely single-family residential, but there's some multifamily residential to the south and east and commercial uses along Sugar Creek Road. The existing zoning is institutional CD for one parcel and neighborhood 1B for that western parcel. This is 2 non-contiguous parcels in this rezoning. The proposal is for neighborhood 1C, which is only 1 step above that classification of neighborhood 1B that is around the surrounding parcels. This is a conventional petition. The proposed zoning district here for N1C is consistent with the neighborhood 1 designation on this site. And because it's a conventional petition, we have no associated site plan, but staff recommends approval of this petition. It is just a real modest increase in that neighborhood 1B designation that's in the surrounding neighborhood. The institutional conditional plan that is on the eastern parcel was for a daycare expansion that never happened, so bringing it under N1C would allow it to be utilized for something and redeveloped accordingly. And I'll take any questions following the petitioner's comments.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, Zoning Committee. David Murray, I'm an attorney here in Charlotte, and I have the pleasure of representing my friends at JCB Urban on this rezoning. The purpose is to allow the potential for these 2 lots to be subdivided, and this is a home builder, so they're going to add houses to these properties. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Ms. Mayfield.
Clarification, the purpose of this is to do what? Because I didn't quite hear the end.
These lots are really deep, but they're 100 feet at their frontage, and so we could have 4 50-foot wide lots under N1C. And so we're not certain that both of the lots are going to be subdivided, but this is going to give some flexibility to the development of those sites since they're so deep.
Thank you. Move to close.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to close public hearing. All in favor, raise hands. That is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Murray. We'll move on to petition item number 28, petition number 2024-056 by Vivo Investment LLC. The location is approximately 5.2 acres, located on the north side of Yorkmont Road, south of Billy Graham Parkway, and west of South Tryon Street in District 3, Ms. Brown's district. Current zoning is O15CD. Proposed zoning is N1B-CD. Staff recommends the approval of this petition, and after staff's presentation, Ms. Brittany Lenz will have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. This site is approximately 5.2 acres located on the north side of Yorkmont Road, west of South Tryon Street and south of Billy Graham Parkway. It is currently developed with a hotel. Current zoning is O15 CD. Proposed zoning is N2B CD. The 2040 policy map recommends commercial place type. There's not a site plan associated with this petition, but conditional notes that include commitments to utilize the existing buildings and associated parking, to convert the 138 existing hotel rooms to 138 multifamily residential units, requires that all units must function entirely as a hotel or as multifamily units. There's no overlap of hotel and multifamily use allowed. Commits to reserving a minimum of 10% of the multifamily units for households earning less than or equal to 80% area median income for a 20-year period. States intention to maintain the existing Yorkmont Road streetscape and requires at least 30 days notice of intent to hotel occupants of initiation of conversion to multifamily units. States the petitioner's intent to work with city housing and neighborhood services regarding the transition of residents. It is inconsistent with the place type recommendation. However, staff does recommend approval upon resolution of outstanding issues related to transportation and land use. The petition would provide an additional housing option in an area identified by the comprehensive plan as having insufficient housing. Proposed neighborhood 2 zoning and place type would provide an appropriate transition from the commercial place type to the east along South Tryon Street and the neighborhood 1 place type to the south and west along Yorkmont Road. I will take any questions following the petitioner's presentation.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, members of zoning committee. I see some new and some familiar faces, so welcome to the new guard and look forward to working with you. My name is Brittany Lenz. I am a lawyer with the law firm of Alexander Ricks, and I'm here tonight representing Vivo Investments, Vivo Living. Joe did a good job orienting to this site. I'm going to be very brief with your time. I know we're second to last on the agenda. The one interesting thing that I'd point out, when I was looking at Google Maps, I don't think I realized how saturated hotel uses were in this area. Just at this intersection, you see 6 hotel uses. This was also, as Joe mentioned, a hotel use, an extended stay America. It's outdated. It's kind of been a security issue. What Vivo is looking to do is a 1-to-1 conversion from a hotel to residential units. There are existing kitchens and bathrooms that would be upfitted, modernized. As you heard, there is the affordable housing commitment. There is the anti-displacement provision, working with housing and neighborhood services. So we are excited about this project. As staff said, they're supportive because of the need for housing in this area. Vivo's a reputable company that's done this multiple times, both in Charlotte and across the U.S., enhancing the security, the safety, and the housing stock in the area. So at that, I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Ms. Brown?
Yes, thank you so much, Brittany, for presenting today. I've been in contact with Yorkmount neighborhood. They're very particular about that area, and I appreciate the affordable housing unit piece. What bothers me is the community, zero commitment from the community.
Yeah, so Vivo has actually been engaged with the community. They're willing to do open houses, all of those items. There hasn't been much community engagement, but they've been reaching out and are happy to continue to do so.
Yeah, with me. Include me, definitely. We got to get that done. So it sounds good. I look and I go to the commitment for the affordable housing piece, and I know exactly where you're talking about, some of that behavior over there and the traffic.
That's right.
To pedestrian traffic, and some things have happened there with safety concerns. So I do agree with you on that. But there was a minimum of 10% for, could it be increased?
So this would be, since it is kind of a sustainable practice of using the existing buildings, there are 3 buildings there, they're using the existing buildings as a 1-to-1 conversion, that's naturally going to create that attainable housing market. There is that commitment to a minimum of 10% being at 80 AMI right now. I'm happy to discuss that with you further. But overall, these are going to be attainable housing units compared to a lot of this new build where you see the demolition and new construction buildings around Charlotte.
Okay, all right. And so one last thing is, for me, I know Mayfield Councilmember Mayfield might have some questions for you. I like to see what you're doing in the area, but I just recently, even though we're supposed to be on recess, we were not. The community reached out to me, and I'm just curious, some of the community leaders had just a few questions, and if we could get them involved and engage the community, I'll be happy to advocate and be in the vicinity, but thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you,
I have
Councilmember
no more
Brown.
questions at this time.
Ms. Mayfield.
Thank you, and you are so correct, Councilman Brown, that Yorkmont, Ms. Knupp, and others are extremely active and have been for a very long time, so it is interesting. So if I'm reading this correctly, this would be, if this petition were to move forward, this commitment is from the petitioner without asking for any trust fund or city dollars in this particular development.
That's correct. It's a product of being able to reuse the building and have the existing parking and infrastructure that gives them the ability to produce that attainable housing price point.
I look forward to following up with Councilmember Brown and hearing from the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brown, you had another comment?
I did, and when I went into the transportation considerations, I went over to the outstanding issues prior to public hearing and transportation. It did say that the trips are going to go down. Is that correct?
That is right. So it's currently entitled for a hotel, was being used as a hotel. You can see the transportation slide that I have up now. The total daily trips is decreased when you're talking a multifamily unit compared to a hotel unit.
Okay. All right, so I do want to make note of that, and we'll be in contact, but thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
presenting. I don't have any other questions. Move to close.
Second.
All in favor to close public hearing, raise hands. That's unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Lenz.
Thank you.
We move on to our final agenda item for the evening. Agenda item number 29, petition number 2024-058 by Wilkes Asset Management. The location is approximately 2.85 acres, located south of Ridge Road, east of Benfield Road, and north of Craven Thomas Road in District 4, Ms. Johnson's district. Current zoning is CC. Proposed zoning is CAC 1EX. Staff recommends the approval of this petition upon resolution of outstanding issues related to the environment. After staff's presentation, Ms. Grant will join us again, and she'll have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. The subject site, as you mentioned, is a 2.8-acre parcel located south of Ridge Road and east of Benfield Road. Bryce Knoll Lane and Highland Shops Drive currently terminate at the site. The area surrounding the site includes a rich mix of commercial and multifamily development to the north and west, and single-family neighborhoods are found westerly of Benfield Road. The petitioner is seeking to rezone the site to a Community Activity Center 1 exception. The site and much of the surrounding area is currently zoned commercial center with some neighborhood service zoning to the north and west. The 2040 policy map identifies the subject site as well as the surrounding properties as a community activity center. The proposed development is a 120,000 square foot climate-controlled storage facility with a maximum building height of 50 feet. The development will include extending Bryce Knoll Lane and Highland Shops Drive through the site. The petitioner is seeking flexibility from 2 UDO standards. 1, to allow 2 new street extensions to be constructed in accordance with the office commercial narrow cross-section standards in lieu of the office commercial wide cross-section, and to limit ground floor activation requirements to the Highland Shops Drive frontage in lieu of both frontages. Public benefits they are offering in relation to these exceptions include the provisions of public open space and the construction of off-site sidewalk improvements to fill a gap in the pedestrian network along Highland Shops Drive. Staff recommends approval of this petition as the requested zone is consistent with the Community Activity Center place type. The place type calls for a mix of retail, personal services, multifamily, and office uses. The proposed self-storage facility is supportive of the existing and future mix of residential uses in the area.
Thank you. Ms. Grant?
Good
Yes,
evening
ma'am.
again, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, members of the zoning committee, Bridget Grant with Land Use Consultant with Moore and Van Allen. It's a pleasure to be here tonight on behalf of Josh Wilkes. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here. Teresa did a great job providing the overview, so I'm just going to highlight that this rezoning, while seeking exceptions, is still providing the required road network and extensions along Highlands Shops Parkway, as well as Bryce Knoll. The reason we're seeking that reduction in the streetscape standard is because it's the terminus of two streets, and we're directly across the street from a cemetery and church, which also changes our needs for ground floor activation. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comment?
Move to close the hearing.
Second.
All in favor of closing public hearing, raise hands. That is unanimous.
Have a good evening.
Before we convene, I would like to recognize Ms. Mayfield.
Thank you. I just want to take a moment to thank our city and or county staff during the time that we have been off. You may have noticed. So for our residents and community members that may have had a challenge, if you are not able to get to the highest speaking stand, there are now spaces for you to be down here on this level with us that is not carpeted, as well as a much lower podium for you to easily have access to try to make your building, the people's building, more ADA compliant. So that was done over the 6 weeks that we were out. So just wanted to give a shout out and thank the staff who went in, got this done, and did it so seamless that you probably didn't even notice that there was something a little different, except when the first gentleman came up. It's like, wait, so now we have podiums as well as parking space that's not carpeted for our members that may be in a wheelchair, motorized, or by hand. So thank you for allowing me to acknowledge them.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. Staff always being thoughtful and thinking about how we can connect better with the community. With that, I will say we
Had a
are.
motion? Second.
I had a motion. I have a second. All in favor? Lee, go home.
Y'all have a great night.